Welcome to the Explainer. So glad you're here with us today. Look, we're tackling a concept that is literally going to shift how you look at learner progress forever. You know how it is, right? You're deep in the daily grind of data collection, and man, it is incredibly easy to fall into the habit of just checking those daily percentages to see how a client is doing. But actually, scratch that. If we're only looking at daily percentages, we're missing the entire big picture of instructional efficiency. A daily percentage? That's just a tiny little snapshot of a single session. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the math behind a much more revealing metric that spans across all those sessions. Get ready, because we are fully unpacking the Trials-to-Criterion formula, figuring out why it's absolutely critical for evaluating your teaching methods, and making sure you have the foundation to calculate it perfectly. Right off the bat, let's talk about why mastering this matters so much right now, especially if you're gearing up for your board exams. Beware of what we can call the 6th edition exam trap. Seriously, the test makers know exactly where candidates tend to stumble with this. Because the formula looks deceptively simple on the surface, they're going to actively test your ability to calculate exactly how long it takes a learner to acquire a skill. And they'll do it by burying the real numbers in a dense, multi-layered word problem. They know you're under a time crunch, and they are just waiting for a very specific math error when you tally up the data. But don't worry, we're going to break down the underlying logic step by step so that trap completely loses its power over you. Okay, let's dive into this definition directly. Trials-to-Criterion is, at its core, a metric of instructional efficiency. But what does that actually mean in practice for you? Well, its primary purpose is measuring the true speed of learning. We do this by meticulously tracking every single response opportunity presented to the learner until a highly specific mastery level is achieved. Think of it this way. If a student scores 100% today, but it took them, 400 attempts over 2 months to get there, are they really acquiring that skill quickly? Not necessarily. This formula essentially serves as a lie detector for how fast or slow a student is genuinely acquiring a skill. It strips away any misleading daily averages to show you the raw effort required. Let's walk through how this builds with a concrete mock scenario. Picture a vocational sorting task. Maybe your client is at a table sorting materials by color and shape to prep for a workplace environment. Your mastery criterion is pretty strict here. You need 3 consecutive blocks of 5 trials to hit exactly 100% accuracy before you can officially say the skill is mastered. So how does this play out over time? Block 1, the client makes some errors while they're just figuring out the task. Block 2, still some errors as they practice, but then they finally catch the rhythm. Blocks 3, 4, and 5 are perfectly executed. Boom, that's 100% accuracy across those final 3 consecutive blocks. Now, looking at that exact scenario we just built, here is the big question you have to ask yourself. Do you only count those perfect trials in your final calculation? Think carefully about your gut instincts here. Imagine it's exam day. The digital clock is ticking down in the corner of your screen, your palms are maybe a little sweaty, and you're reviewing this exact sequence of data in a massive paragraph. The overwhelming temptation is to just add up blocks 3, 4, and 5, because hey, those are the only ones that actually met the mastery criteria and look successful. Is that the right move to find your Trials-to-Criterion? Wrong! If your instinct was to say yes, you are definitely not alone, but that is the exact trap we mentioned earlier. You must sum every single response opportunity presented to that learner. You start counting from trial number 1, on day 1, minute 1, and you absolutely do not stop adding those trials up until that final mastery block is locked in and the criteria is fully met. Leaving out those early error blocks is literally the #1 most common exam day mistake. Why? Because those early trials, even though they were unsuccessful, still consumed valuable teaching time, resources, and effort. To measure true efficiency, you've got to account for every ounce of energy put into teaching that skill from the very beginning. We really have to be incredibly specific about what actually goes into that total sum, because the word problems will try to distract you with different types of responses. So what exactly do you count? In short, the whole shebang. Everything. You count the independent correct responses, obviously, but you also count the prompted responses, whether you had to use full physical guidance, a partial verbal cue, or just a simple gesture. And yep, you definitely count the flat-out unprompted errors too. Every single attempt goes into the calculation bucket, completely regardless of the outcome. Whether the trial was a flawless success or a total miss, it took up instructional time, so it becomes part of your grand total. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when things don't go perfectly during a hot streak, the dreaded 0. This 0 represents your consecutive streak resetting. Imagine your criteria demands consecutive blocks to prove mastery. Your learner is doing absolutely fantastic, stringing together perfect trials, but then they slip up halfway through a mastery run. Maybe they lose focus and make just one single mistake on the second block of the required 3. Just like that, the consecutive streak drops completely back to 0. You are forced to start the consecutive count all over again from scratch. It can feel super frustrating in the moment, for sure, but it is totally essential for ensuring true mastery has actually occurred. Let's clarify these exact reset rules so you don't drop your running total and get totally confused by the arithmetic when you're taking your test. You kind of need a dual-track mind for this. Rule 1, as we just covered, the mastery streak itself resets to 0 upon an error. But Rule 2 is where people tend to panic. You keep counting those failed trials in your overall total sum. Do not throw that data away just because the streak broke. And Rule 3, you do not stop adding to your total sum of trials until that consecutive streak condition is 100% satisfied. The streak itself resets, but your grand total of trials, that just keeps continuously growing. Let's zoom out to the big picture for a second. Why do we even track this metric so rigorously in our field? Well, if we compare 2 different educational interventions aimed at teaching the exact same skill, let's say Protocol A takes 50 trials to reach criterion, while Protocol B only takes 15 trials to get the exact same result, Protocol B is the definitive winner on efficiency, hands down. This is exactly why this metric is vital. It allows us to scientifically prove which teaching method is getting the learner to independence faster. By identifying the most efficient protocol, we're ultimately saving teaching time, reducing learner frustration, and totally optimizing our clinical resources. So as we wrap up our exam day focus, here's a crucial piece of advice. Do not let the wording confuse you at the very last second. When you are sitting there reading a dense question, look extremely closely at the final sentence. Is a test maker asking you for the total number of individual trials to meet criterion or the total number of blocks to meet criterion? They are 2 entirely different numbers. A block might contain 5 or 10 individual trials. If you blindly calculate the individual trials when the prompt specifically asks for blocks, all your hard work on the math is completely wasted. Always read that final phrasing carefully before you lock in your answer. Which brings us to the ultimate question to end today's explainer. Are you ready to test your speed and face today's advanced mock items? Knowing the theory and the logic behind the formula is one thing, but executing the math perfectly under the pressure of a ticking clock, that's another challenge entirely. I challenge you to take what we have just unpacked, jump directly into your student platform right now, and apply this exact formula. Keep your eye on that grand total, watch out for those consecutive streak resets, and pay incredibly close attention to the specific wording. Can you beat the clock and avoid the exam trap? Let's find out. Get in there and crush it.